Good evening, everyone. Kerr's Rage, Part 1 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga by me. Episode 5. We start out with a chapter about Kalor, Starseeker. Kalor is one of my best friends' Dungeons and Dragons characters. He created Kalor Starseeker. The version in my book is a spin-off from my friend Tommy Magazu's character. Tommy was instrumental in editing this book with me initially, and he helped me out a lot with editing the other volumes as well. So here we go. Kalor Starseeker. On the outskirts of town, there once lived a talented magician by the name of Uldrich Swifthands. He was both my mentor and adopted father. His small home was located on the corner Doris Avenue and Jacobs Trail, and the front yard held a garden of beautiful flowers within it. Travelers would find the wrought iron gate to be open and see a friendly cobblestone walk to the front porch. After 2 steps across the entryway, the same visitor would find the front door to be unlocked as well. Looking inward, he would see a small den with meager furnishings. To the right, a small pantry, and beyond those 2 front rooms, a crowded study. That room was a mass of books, scrolls, and parchments of various materials and textures. On the east and rearmost wall, there was a great open window, and the candle's light bounced about the room with each of the many draughts from it. Before the window, several thatched bird cages held 4 canaries, 2 white doves, and a great black raven named Flax. To either side of the study rested 2 large desks, facing each other. The table's legs were cut low to accommodate short gnomish ones. On top of each table, several bottles of ink in an assortment of colors stood among 2 great half-melted candles. Each desk had several inkwells with tufted quill pens standing within them. Along the northern wall, numerous jars, containers, and glassware stood. Each was filled with an assortment of herbs, minerals, and other items critical to a sorcerer's trade. A large, hand-woven rug decorated the center of the room, atop thick wooden planking. As his apprentice, I helped him with all the mundane tasks associated with the keeping up of a household, and in that regard, Uldrich was similar to many other wizards, scribes, and other learned types. Humility and servitude, he said, were necessary steps in learning respect. I was a talented student, filled with a youthful passion for learning, and my love of reading and knowledge could never be satisfied. I'm afraid, however, that Master Uldrich could never relax when I left my studies and went out and about, for you see, I had a little trouble staying out of trouble. A blessing or a curse, it is nonetheless a problem that I've had to deal with all my life. One fine spring day, several years before my second apprenticeship, Master Uldrich had discovered me stealing a pastry from the window of Jasmine's bakery. He'd grabbed me roughly by the collar and shook me until he was sure that I wouldn't run away. When he had my attention, he said that he'd call the constable and tell my parents what I'd done unless I came to work for him. It wasn't the first time that I'd stolen anything, just the first time that I'd ever been caught, and I was very frightened. If my father ever found out that I was a thief, he'd disown me. And so I went to work for Master Uldrich, and eventually I learned that he'd seen much more in me than just my ability to steal. My mentor himself was a master of illusion and sleight of hand, and he'd seen those same talents in me when he'd caught me. But what was even more amazing was the fact that he was a true sorcerer. He taught me that a person with such a gift was sensitive to the energies around himself. With that basic ability and the magical formula necessary to release the forces of nature, a magician could channel those powers and create physical effects in the real world. Learning to control those effects was the purpose of his craft. Most importantly, I learned that I possessed the sorcerer's gift, and of the many magical disciplines, I was the most skilled in the powers of illusion. With that new discovery came a new life, and my apprenticeship was sure to guarantee my success. But growing pains come with youth, and I was no different. My fondness for pastries eventually landed me in jail, and then in service of the king, a full tour of duty in Lord Sherrick's royal army, to be exact. All for a minor infraction involving the disappearance of several treats from Jasmine's bakery. Unfortunately, neither my circus tumbling nor my mentor's attempts to appease the judge could save me from the town's watch and 4 years of military service. I was but a boy of 56. I learned a lot about the world in those years, patrolling with the 3rd Mountain Brigade in the treacherous Knoll Hills. I even achieved the rank of Private First Class before I was discharged at the end of the war. Afterward, I returned to Waysboro and began my second apprenticeship with Uldrick. Under his expert supervision, my talents grew. The formula for illusions were complex and moldable, but I learned the basics well, mastering simple phantasms and sleight of hand. Sitting at my desk, I could often be found studying intently from behind round spectacles. Blue-eyed, young and vibrant, my face would have appeared curious, or perhaps just thoughtful, with the first signs of a mustache beginning to form beneath my sharp, pointed nose. I wore the black robes of a wizard's apprentice, with silver symbols of my craft woven into the sleeves and collar. My nimble hands were never still, whether they were occupying themselves with a pen or just giving my chin a convenient place to rest. They seemed to have a will of their own. My glasses were magical things that Master Uldrick claimed the invention of, although I doubted the definite nature of this. Regardless, they were one of a kind, and they allowed me to read and thus pursue a talent long dormant within me. Acquiring a few pastries for a brief respite was now a simple task indeed, much to the dismay of Miss Jasmine, who could never figure out where her extra cakes had gone. It was payment for 4 years of hell, or so I thought. To this very day I always chuckle before biting into a fresh, hot pastry. But that term of apprenticeship was coming to a close, for I knew that my friends would soon be assembling in Waysboro at our appointed time. Sitting at my desk one night, 2 days before the full moon of Sanguis, the blood moon, I thought of our promise, now almost a year old. It was a pledge made between the best of friends, the kind of friends that can only grow out of intensely dangerous experiences. The time had come to fulfill that agreement, and after cleaning up the shop for the last time for a while, I placed my unfinished scrolls back in their cases and said goodbye to Master Uldrick. Heading to my humble room in the attic, I packed my belongings for travel, backpack and bedroll, clothes and cap, extra boots, and a long hooded cloak. In addition, I packed the items necessary to practice my craft: pens, ink, paper, and my most coveted possession of all, my Book of Shadows, within which I had recorded all my magical formula. Sheathing my dagger, I headed out into the shadowy streets toward One-Eyed Jack's. Greenberry Abbey. This is where I introduce Carmen more. Carmen was originally another great friend of mine, Rick Wolf's character in one of my Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. Anyway, let us continue. Greenberry Abbey sat amid the stone-cobbled streets of Cannes, Fermanor's northernmost great city. It was located near the center of town, at the corner of Meadow Lane and Longbow Drive. The abbey encircled a great courtyard and gardens, at the center of which a large grove of fruit trees flourished. The freshwater spring within the garden was what made the monastery famous, for it was said to possess great restorative powers, and the gift of its healing was used only sparingly. It was here, beside the sacred spring, that a young acolyte knelt in prayer. She held her palms together in the manner of bedtime prayers, and her white robes accentuated her strong yet feminine form. Vanamoinen, hero of the gods, please protect my friends on their journey home. Watch over them and speed up their journey. In this and in all things, I am at your mercy. She was the noble daughter of Sir William Anastasia, and she had 4 sisters. The eldest was married to the son of a duke, and because her father had sired only daughters, he had chosen his strongest for theological training in knighthood. For this, he was cursed and ridiculed by his peers, for who had ever heard of a female gallant? Yet her father had held no such reservations, training her from the youngest possible age in horsemanship and swordplay. Believing in the desires of her father, she applied all her strength to the task of learning. Not surprisingly, she became as skilled as any man her age and was, quite possibly, one of the best. But despite her father's greatest attempts to enter her in the contests of knighthood, no other nobleman's son would face her in fair contest. He was, however, successful in enlisting her in the king's army at the age of 16. She was immediately sent to Highcrest Garrison, in the army's hopes that the enigma of a female gallant would never return. As her father had anticipated, she excelled in combat, surviving 4 years of intensive border patrols in some of the most hostile terrain the region had to offer. She attained the rank of sergeant before her tour of duty had ended. It was a great personal victory, and it was her father's greatest pride. She fulfilled his final wishes by returning to the abbey to complete her theological training. There she studied the ways of Ilmatar and Vanemoinen, learning to follow the paths of law and piety. The daughter of William, her name was Carmen Elise Anastasia. After a year of the monk's intense religious tutoring and personal meditation, the time of her ordainment had come. She had mourned the loss of her fellow soldiers, and she believed in the truth and goodness of her faith. Yet her time at the monastery had softened her body, and she longed for the return of adventure. Kneeling beside the sacred spring, she paused to see her reflection in its waters. When she adjusted her silver headband, her rich auburn hair tumbled down her shoulders, and her emerald eyes sparkled at the pool's surface. She prayed for many things within that sacred place, but today she hoped that the high priestess had plans for her other than making her a nun. Soon the 3 priests, who had been her tutors, would arrive to take her to the cathedral. Hearing the soft steps of her escorts approaching from behind her, she quickly rose to her feet. Adjusting the blue braided belt denoting her rank of senior acolyte, she turned to greet them. "The high priestess awaits you in her chambers, my lady," Master Oldrin said. "I trust that you have been well?" Master Nahum asked. "Yes, Father. What is the sacred trust?" Master Neri questioned. "That Ilmatar holds my soul, and the sacred truth." So the test has already begun, she thought. The sacred truth begins with our self-knowledge. True enlightenment can only come from our Creator, Ukko, the Supreme God. May He have mercy on our souls. Each master continued the sacred ritual of questioning as they led her through the cloister and halls of the monastery. Along the abbey's walls, brass oil lamps illuminated tapestries depicting battles of old and long-forgotten prophets. The cathedral wasn't overly large, but it was magnificent in its own fashion. Beautiful frescoes covered the high arched ceiling. The great hardwood beams supporting the roof were ornately carved, depicting the mighty battle axe of Vanemoinen and images of the gods in all their splendor. Seated upon a great yet plain dais was the high priestess Lorelei, and although she was very old, she carried herself with poise and unquestionable faith. "Come here, girl," she commanded. Carmen knelt at the priestess's feet. "Your Reverence," she said while genuflecting. "You spent a year with us, my child, and although I know you came to us bearing great pain, I sense that your burden has been lifted by faith. I also sense that you no longer desire to remain here." "That is so, Your Reverence," she said. It was of no avail to lie to a high priestess. "When you first arrived, I thought that your soul was damaged beyond hope, but your spirit proved me wrong. My first intention was to bring you into the sisterhood, but after careful consideration, I have decided upon another fate for you." 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind at that moment. Foremost among them was, "Praise Vanemoinen." "It seems that you have talents extraordinary to both men and women alike. Your form is purely feminine, yet your strength and abilities are those of a warrior. When she paused for a moment in thought, the entire cathedral was silent, as all those who listened held their breaths in anticipation. After careful consideration, I can see no other solution than to grant you the title of Gallant and Champion of Greenbury Abbey. Is your heart true to the path of Ilmatar? Yes, revered mother, she declared. Praise be to Vanamoinen. She could barely contain her excitement at receiving such an honor. She'd just been given a title previously reserved only for men. Very well, Laura Lane confirmed. Slowly rising from her seat, she stood before her. Carmen, do you swear to uphold the tenets of the church and be true to Ilmatar as long as thou shalt live? I so swear, your reverence, to defend those faithful to the gods of Kalevala and to have mercy upon all heretics. I so swear. Do you swear to protect the weak and to join in the battle against evil on penalty of your immortal soul? I so swear, your reverence. Then I declare you Lady Carmen Elise Anastasia, gallant and champion of Greenbury Abbey. You may rise. You have learned the goodness and truth of Ukko, supreme ruler of the gods, and so you have saved your immortal soul. As you grow in wisdom, so too will you grow in power. Use this power wisely, my child, for I have foreseen a great destiny within you. I will, your reverence. Go now and find your destiny. Be true to the faith, and you will always have a home within our house. Finishing the ceremony, she bid Carmen farewell and motioned Master Neri to accompany her to her waiting chambers. Thank you, your reverence, she said. So many thoughts were racing about in her mind that she could think of nothing else to say. The three brothers led her to her room, and they had done daily, as they had done daily for the past year. Each of them bid her farewell, and there were no few tears shed among them. Despite this, she could barely contain her excitement. Closing her chamber door for privacy, she removed her travel pack from her trunk and began to pack her belongings for the journey home. The first item that she pulled from it was her well-worn set of travel leathers. Removing her robe, she slipped her legs into her leather riding pants and pulled them on. She was a bit disturbed by their snug fit. Had they shrunk with lack of use, or had she grown soft, she wondered. Slipping into her cotton undershirt, she then donned her leather tunic, which hung from wide shoulders to mid-thigh. Pulling on her riding boots was a bit of a chore because the leather had dried and shrunk them a bit. Strapping on her weapons belt, she stood for a moment, remembering the familiar feel of her traveling attire. These were not the clothes of a nun, they were the garbs of a trained fighter. Sliding her long sword into its scabbard, she hefted her backpack, bedroll, and other items and headed for the stables. The monks had been taking good care of Alger during her stay, and the Percheron was well exercised and very healthy. She saddled him and fit his harness with practiced ease. When her gear was strapped down, she climbed into the saddle and left the monastery at a trot. Riding along Longbow Drive was quite a challenge. The street was a chaotic mass of peddlers, merchants, and their wares this time of year. The fall harvest was now only weeks away, and it brought in people and their trade goods from far and wide. She headed westward through these streets, and all those in her way shied from her path, for she was a strange sight indeed. For who could possibly imagine a female warrior sitting atop a knight's mount, carrying a long halberd-style polearm braced in her left stirrup, and wearing a belted sword? It brought bewildered stares from all those who saw her, for who was she? If not a great warrior, then she most certainly was a lunatic. Either way, she was best left alone. Making her way through the less traveled side streets, she left the merchants' quarter and finally exited Caen through the west gate. Breaking Alger into a distance-consuming canter, she headed southwest, preferring the open farmland and wooded copses of that country to the more traveled roadways. Praising Ilmatar for her life and freedom, she headed toward the westernmost borders of the enchanted forest, and then on towards Waysboro. Hopefully her old comrades had remembered their promise made on the full moon of Sangui over a year ago. In her heart, she knew that they had not forgotten. In our next installment, we'll introduce Kerr, son of Moldrin. Thank you. Have a good night. And remember, read Kerr's Rage.